This lesson is going to be teaching you how to CAD a jacket design. It's a little bit more trickier than some of the designs we've done in the level 1 class. It entails a lot more involved to creating a collar, different pocket shapes, etc. So just wanted to talk to you first before we get started on, I designed two different styles of blazer jackets, so slightly different pockets, different top stitching details. This one's a little bit more casual. It still has what's called a notch style collar. This one has a 3-button placket, has different pocket details. These are called patch pockets. It has a chest pocket here. This one is the same version of the same jacket, except it doesn't have any top stitching. It's a little bit more tailored and cleaner. Has different pocket details, still 3 buttons, still the same collar shape, just really a difference. The casual version has a little bit more top stitching details, slightly more casual pockets. And here's our back view. This one has buttons on the back sleeve cuff. They both have something that's called a back vent that helps to open up the jacket in the back. Just wanted to briefly talk to you about different jacket styles. So this is just one jacket style you can do that's called a blazer jacket. And there's so many different variations, so it's really up to you how you want to design it. But just to talk about, there's single-breasted version jackets where they just have a single button, a longer, collar shape that maybe dips down a little bit lower. Some that have stitching, some don't. Some have different pocket details here. Some have darts or what's called princess seams, which are these things right here that come out of the armhole. Here's another version, a little bit more men's driven jacket, slightly rounder collar, has that chest pocket, different flat pockets here, 3-button. Here's a good variation of single versus double-breasted suit jackets. So, a single-breasted jacket is when the buttons just line up 1, 2, or 3 buttons down along the same line. Double-breasted is when the collar here overlaps so much that you actually get 2 rows of buttons going across. So that's the main difference between single-breasted and double-breasted. You get 1 row of buttons here or 2 rows across. The actual collar extends a little bit further over the body on a double-breasted jacket. So what we're going to do is design a single-breasted jacket, 3 buttons, but again, you can design any one you want. I'm just trying to show you a brief tutorial of how to get started. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to draw a half a drawing over the croquis figure. It looks something like this. We're going to take our half a drawing. We're going to join the 2 pieces at the neck. There's going to be 2 points at the neck, 2 points at the bottom hem that are going to right-click join. And then we're going to go into the hardest part of the tutorial is going to be how to actually make this collar shape. So this is our notch collar detail. And it has this little notch cut out here, so you can see there's a little opening right there. It's a very traditional suiting collar. That's why I think they call it a notch collar, because of this little notched cutout opening there. So we're going to do a shape like this, just one on one side, copy and paste it to get the other, and then we're going to do our back collar shape. It's going to look something similar to that. We're going to hide it underneath. Finish off with some buttons, some different pocket details. I have 2 variations here. And these are some variations of different traditional suiting jacket pocket details. So you can do something where it's called a single welt pocket using the rectangle tool, where it just goes across and the entry of the hand goes from the top into the pocket below. This is a double welt pocket, so it's the same as a single welt, except it has a little seam line in the middle, and the opening of your hand goes right directly opening in that seam right there. So that's how that pocket operates. Patch pocket detail, this is just an open top applied fabric piece on top of the jacket, and the opening for your hand to go in is right up here at the top, and the hand fits inside this patch pocket. These flap pocket details are traditional suiting ones as well, and what they do is this flap right here opens up, opens backwards, and your hand goes underneath the flap. So there's a pocket hidden underneath this flap, and you would stick your hand in there. So that's how those things operate. And you probably may have some of these jackets or some of those pocket variations in some jackets you own at home. So to get started, we're going to work on either the men's or the women's croquis figure, depending on what you want to do for your jacket, men's or women's. And we're going to click on the croquis figure, and we're going to do first thing always is anytime we're drawing over the croquis figure, we're going to do object lock selection. Object lock selection. That's going to lock our croquis figure. You can see now I can't click on it, I can't move it. That's the best way to start. You have to, anytime you're getting ready to draw a new design over that croquis figure, you want to start that way. So here's my half a drawing. And you know, it easily fits over my women's design. Now you can decide how short you want your jacket to be. I made mine so that the length of the jacket hits right about her high hip. So that's kind of a little bit more of a traditional, longer, actually average size jacket for this type of silhouette. Now, you know, obviously you've seen blazer jackets where they've been a little shorter or cropped. That's really true, unique to your design. Made the sleeve length be a true sleeve length where it hits right at the wrist, which is where a tailored jacket like this would normally hit. And that's kind of what I did. So I created that half a body shape. So let's just get started real quick. When you use the pen tool, I'm only going to use a stroke color, no fill in my stroke box. And instead of following the neckline here with that green dotted line, I'm actually going to make it a little straighter. Always start at the center front line, your first point, which is that black line. Take the pen tool, click once, click over to where the neck meets the shoulder, and I'm going to do a subtle curve line, just a click and hold to bend curve line right there. But I'm not going to make it so curvy to follow this long neck because this, and I'll explain why later, but our half a drawing, as you can see, our neckline's a little bit straighter here. So we're not making it starting off with what I called a crew neck collar shape. That's not where we're going to start off here in our half a body drawing. So then we're going to do 2 points there, curve line. Then we're going to take the pen tool, hover over our last point until the minus sign appears to connect onto it. The line across the shoulder is pretty straight, so you don't need to click and hold there. It's a straight line. Now I'm going to zoom out, Command minus, so I can see the full length of her sleeve. Make sure you're zoomed out enough that you can see the full length of her sleeve. And the next line, I'm going to go, next point, I'm going to go all the way down to her wrist, but it's going to be a curve line. So I actually want to zoom out a little bit more, maybe even 3 times zoom out, Command minus. Go down to her wrist, and it's a curve line. It's a very subtle curve line, but I'm going to click close to her wrist, not on her wrist, and I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to pull the mouse up, upward, 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 until the curve line has a very distinct curve where it starts to cover up the top of her bicep. And even if you didn't get it right the first time, remember that you can always just draw the curve line initially, and then you can always click back on it with the white arrow. Use the blue handles and pull at it. Basically what you want to do is cover up her bicep. So we're following this green arm, not the gray arm. The green arm's on both sides. So I want to make sure her bicep is covered up, and that it shouldn't hug her bicep. It should be a little bit away. And then I also want to make sure I'm a little bit away from her wrist, so I'm not too tight against the wrist. So this is a very casual jacket. It's not super slim fitting. Most jackets, even when they're slim fitting, they're not hugging your body and not hugging your anatomy. So you shouldn't follow this arm for the anatomy at all. You should draw it pretty straight, like you can see over here, because that's the way the clothing would look like when it's laying flat off the body. Take the pen tool, hover over that last point till the minus sign appears, means you're getting ready to connect back onto that point. Go across the wrist, again, a little bit away from the wrist. This is a pretty straight line. You can do it subtly curved if you want. You're going to click and hold. You can make a subtle curve line, but it's very subtle, or you can go straight. Then you're going to hover back over that last point with the pen tool and then connect back on it. Go, next point's going to be up at the armpit. This, again, is a very subtle curve line. So we're going to click, and then we're going to hold, and we're going to bend. And we're bending upward again, and then I can release and then mess with the curve handles to kind of get a better look. Basically what I'm trying to do is just make sure that the widest part of her forearm, which is right here in green, is completely covered. So we want to always make sure we're drawing over the figure and covering up the body. We are not hugging the anatomy. Even if it's a slim fitting top, you're still not going to hug the anatomy. You're going to get close to it if you're going to be a slim fitting look, but you're never going to be hugging the muscles or wrist details at all when you draw your clothing. If it's going to be a baggier type fit, you'll obviously go further away from the anatomy. So it depends on the fit that you want. But even for the slim fitting sleeve, you can see how far away I am from the green arm. So I'm still slim fitting, but not hugging her anatomy and making sure that the clothing is covering up her anatomy. Take the pen tool, hover that last point till the minus sign appears, and then here is where you can decide how long you want your blazer jacket to be. So you know if you want it to be cropped, and you know this is her natural waistline right here with the green dot, that's where her belly button would be. This down here, this green line is probably your lower hip area, so that could be pretty long. You know, I think I want to make it like lower hip, maybe slightly above that green line. So this is where you would probably do a pretty straight line going down, but again, don't hug the anatomy, don't go this close, maybe go a little bit away, because these jackets, even when they're slim fitting, they're still not hugging the anatomy too close. So I'm just did a straight line from here to here, then I'm going to take the pen tool, hover over that last point till the minus sign appears, and then you're going to draw your last line at the center front line, and you can draw it as a very subtle curve line, and release. So what I want to be careful though with your subtle curve lines, if you're going to do one like that at the hem, to make sure that they're pretty straight right here. You don't want it to be so curvy that when you connect those 2 points, it makes like a V shape upward or a V shape downward. You'll see what I mean when I join it. Here's my half a body shape, just like I had over here. Move that to the side. I'm going to copy and paste it. Object, which is Command C, Command V, or Control if you're on a PC. Copy and paste it, object, transform, reflect it. This is every time you do a new CAD, this is how you're going to start. Anytime you do a new CAD where you're using the croquis figure, where you're not doing a body manipulation from another CAD, this is how you're going to start. You always start with a half a drawing. Make sure you start off connecting all the vector points together as you draw it, so that no piece is not connected. And then once you get it looking good on your half, then you're going to copy, paste it, object, transform, reflect it. You're going to bring it as close as you can to the other half. Leave a little gap at the top. Leave a little gap down at the bottom. But line it up close enough where you can see that there's a little gap, because you need, and also align it, like pull it down and make sure both half of drawings are pretty level. And then because you're going to have to join points at the top of the neck and points at the bottom hem. So that's how we're going to always end up with a joined body shape. Super important to have a joined body shape. So in order to do that, I'm going to just zoom out for a second, and I'm going to take the black arrow, I'm going to hover over my whole drawing. And again, when I do that, because my croquis figure is locked, as it should be, you can see that when I hover over my whole drawing, it only selects my drawing. It does not select a croquis figure. If you hover over this and your whole page of the croquis figure has a blue line around it, you did not lock your croquis figure. So please don't join your body shapes unless your croquis figure is locked. So hover over the body shape I just did, and then we're going to join our points. There's 2 points at the neck, 2 points at the bottom hem that need to be connected. I'm going to do a right click join once, that connected to 2 points at the neck, right click join twice. That's going to connect my 2 points down at the bottom. Another alternative way that you can also manually join your points, and this is just another way, there's always more than one way to do things in Illustrator CADing, is this is just a manual way. So if right-click join function didn't work for you for some reason, this is another way of joining points. You can take the white arrow, zoom in super close onto the drawing, take the white arrow, actually let me zoom in a little bit more, zoomed in up on the neck. So I click on the white arrow and I click on that point, and that turns blue. You can see the one here at the shoulder is white. So you want to make sure you use the white arrow to click on that individual point, and that's the only one that turns blue. That's the point that I selected. Then you're going to hover over and hold shift and click on the point at the end of the other line, which is on the other neck of the half a drawing. And once both points are blue, then you can do, you can do a right click join, or you can do a Command J or Control J if you're on a PC. And you can see now that when I did that, now I have 2 points with a little line segment in between them. That means that they're joined. And you can also do a double test to make sure that your body shape and knowing your points are joined. You can take the white arrow and you can pull at any point. If you see a line segment like I just did that connects with it, that means you are joined. That's another way of double checking your work, just to pull at the vector points and make sure the things are joined. So that's a right click join or a Command J. I'd have to go down here and do the manual operation down here as well. When you go down to connect your points down at the bottom hem, I kind of always make sure they're pretty level across. So I try and make sure that the 2 planes are pretty straight, because what you don't want is a connection that goes up in a triangle or a connection that goes down in a triangle look. So take the white arrow. This is again just another option. Instead of right click join, you can manually join your points. You can click on with one point with the white arrow, hold shift, click connect on the other point with the white arrow until both points are blue. And then you do a Command J or a Control J. And then again, you can test it with the white arrow. Pull at any point and you'll see a line segment will appear in between those points, and now you know that you're joined. So you can do that anywhere along your drawing. You can double check that your drawing is joined by pulling on any point, and if you see that the line segments are connecting to that point, if you see that something happens, like, I'm just going to mess this up for a second. If I pulled at this point, for instance, at the bottom hem, and I thought it was joined, so say I have it like that, and it looks like it's joined, but I really want to double check it, I can take the white arrow, pull a point. If you see a break like this in your red out, your body shape outline, where now all of a sudden you see that there's no line segment in between those 2 points, that means your body shape is not joined. That will cause you problems later on when you go to color your CADs or fill them in pattern or fabric scan textures later. If you ever go to color this CAD later and it doesn't have a joined line segment in between the points, you will have problems. It's super important to join your points and to have a body shape that is now fully joined like this. So I can take the black arrow and move it around the page anywhere I want, and that means that my body shape is joined. I can fill the interior of it with pattern and color. And that's what you always want. The goal of any new body shape you draw is to start off with a joined body shape that you can fill with color and pattern later. So here's my joined body shape. The next thing that I did with this joined body shape is I drew a collar detail over top of it. That's probably the most trickiest part, to be honest, and that's going to take a little bit of training to kind of teach you how to do that. I sometimes start off a little bit with the croquis figure, but I end up taking it off the croquis figure because it ends up just being a little bit more of what can I say, an eyeball operation, something you kind of just train your eye to do. But I use the croquis figure for a moment just to determine how long I want the lapel to be. So that collar is part of what's called a lapel. So this is actually the collar right here. This is the front collar, and it's connected to this lapel detail. So depending on what we were talking about over here, scroll over here for a second. You can see that, like on a single-breasted jacket, the lapel and the collar go really far down on your chest because there's only one button to secure it. Where you can see something like this is really low too, but maybe something in comparison. The collar and lapel might not go down so far if you have multiple buttons here. Some even collar and lapels hit up even a little higher on the chest because they might have 3 buttons. So it depends. I use the croquis figure first just to determine how long the collar and lapel are going to scoop down into the chest area, and then I take it off the croquis figure and continue to draw the collar and lapel. So first, if you're going to do that, let's just object lock selection on our body shape for a second, because anytime you're getting ready to draw new shapes on top of an existing shape, it's also good to just lock this the body shape for a second so that you don't accidentally draw and mess up your vector points on your body shape. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the pen tool. Again, I'm working with a no fill color, only a stroke color. I'm going to double click on my stroke color and pick something completely different color that I can see. So I can see where that I'm drawing my collar versus some other color like green or black that's on the croquis figure, a different color than red that's on my body shape. I picked blue. So something just poppy that I'm going to be able to see my collar shape over top of my body shape and not get confused on what's what. So here's the indication. So how low do you want? Make a decision before you design this jacket. How long do you want the jacket to be, number one? How many buttons do you think you want at the front if it's a button jacket like what we're designing today? And then decide based on that, if you only want one button but your jacket is super long, you might have to draw a longer lapel shape that comes really far down because you only have one button to secure it. If you have a jacket where you're designing something with like 3 buttons, You can end your lapel, you can draw it up a little higher because you're going to have 3 buttons going down here. So use this kind of croquis figure for a second to kind of gauge how long do you want the opening of your jacket. And what I'm talking about is this opening right here. So this is where you, like if you didn't have a shirt on underneath this blazer, this is where your chest would show, right in here. So how low you want this collar and lapel, it can come down really low if you wanted to. And you just have less buttons. I had chose to draw a higher lapel and collar detail because I had 3 buttons. So I'm going to use the croquis figure just real quick to kind of determine that, and I'm going to take it off. So I'm going to take the pen tool, and I'm going to click right here on the center front line. Again, we start everything on our center front line, and then I'm going to draw a curve line. It's going to connect up to the shoulder, so I'm going to draw a minor curve line like that. And again, all of our curve lines can always be adjusted, guys, so don't worry. And I might even pull that point a little wider. So think about this space between the center front line and this place where I drew what's going to be the opening of my collar and lapel as the space where you're going to actually see your chest if you didn't have a shirt underneath this jacket. And so then the next thing I'm going to do is draw a little higher up on the neck, another curve line. And this is at the point where I'm going to take it off the drawing because the croquis figure is not going to help me for the rest of this. So in order for me to do that, I'm going to object unlock all. I am going to pull the croquis figure off the page using the black arrow, move it completely off because it'll be easier for you to move that away than for you to try and grab your body CAD off of the croquis figure. So this is where I'm going to draw. Let me pull back my shape and bring these up to meet it. So this is where I'm going to draw a collar shape that looks something like this. So this is what a notch collar looks like. There's so many different variations of jacket collars, even for this what's called a blazer jacket. So you can do your own research on that. But this is a traditional what's called a notch collar. So this is basically where I'm going to start. So I'm going to draw, and I know this could be a little bit cumbersome for a first-time student, but basically what I'm trying to do is I'm going to draw something that looks like this. And you can see I kind of started my lapel shape here with this blue line. And actually that's why I didn't need the croquis figure because it came up a little bit too high. So actually I'm going to delete that point. What I just need is one continuous line like this. And I know I have this to be as my guide, but I'm going to take it away for a second. So I'm going to draw a shape that's going to look like this. So when I dissect this shape, basically what it is, just click on it with the white arrow. So this is actually one whole shape, you guys. So this is actually, if I take the white arrow and I just click on the line, this is a joined shape. It started here, right here. One point went up to 1 or 2 points here, then it went straight, then it went straight, then it went straight, and then ended with a curved line and connected all the way back. So I can fill this collar shape with pattern and color because it's one whole joined shape made up of several points. So that's the goal of this. It's not connected to the body. It's a separate loose piece, but it's a joined shape nonetheless. So I drew one continuous line from one point here to one point there, and that represents what I did here. I actually put a second point in there. Let's see if we need it this time. I don't know. And then the next thing I'm going to do is go from this point here all the way down. So I'm going to hover over that last point with the white arrow until the minus sign appears. I'm going to kind of rest it against the shoulder. It's not going to touch the shoulder like this. It's going to come a little bit above the shoulder because this collar, what it does is it folds down onto your shoulder and it actually does rest on your shoulder, but it doesn't lay flush. It kind of sits up above a little bit. So I'm going to take that pen tool and just do a sharp point like that. And then I'm going to go, and then I'm going to do this right here. So this is 2 points connecting. So that's a straight line as well. And this is where it just takes a little bit of eyeballing and again, maneuvering. Every time I do this, I always start off drawing a shape and then I end up manipulating it a little bit after I've already drawn it. So just draw a shape that looks something like this. And these are all straight lines. The last curve line is this one right here. This is going to be a curve line, you guys, not straight. So you're going to hover over that last point till the little circle appears. It means you're getting ready to join 2 points. join your shape together so it's a whole joined shape. Click on it, but click and hold, and we're going to pull it up until you get what's called, this is bottom half right here, it's called the lapel. You're going to get something that's a little bit curved right there. So these are straight lines. This is straight, this is straight, this is straight, this is straight. But right here is the curve, and this one's a curved line as well. So that's kind of the shape that we're looking for initially. So that you can see when I click on the black arrow, I can move it around the page. It's a joined shape. If I touch any line, any point in it, line segment, I can move it and the line segment would be connected. So you need a shape like that. And to finish off that shape is we need to add a loose piece. So this, if I take this little part off with the white arrow, that's actually a little loose piece right there that I just added on top. So I'm going to take the pen tool and just add that in. It's just a little line segment, and you can see that it's going to just go flush edge with this right here. Just kind of take it all the way through. Make sure I color it the same color as the lapel. And then we can also click on the lapel and the collar shape with the white arrow, and this time I actually want you to fill the fill color with white. So you can go to window color, and that give you your color window color box. Looks like this. We always have a white and a black chip available in that color box, and you're going to make sure your fill box is on top. Make sure that corner is overlapping before you click on the white color in the fill box. And what that just did is it filled our collar with white so that you can't see that red body shape underneath the collar anymore, because a minute ago you saw it right there, and now it's disappeared because I have a white filled collar shape and it's sitting on top. If by chance you lost this little piece when you did that, all you have to do is just maybe move the collar away, find it, it's hidden underneath that white collar shape, and then all you have to do is bring it on top, do an object arrange, bring to front, if that happened to you when you filled it with white. It will still be there. It's just when you fill shapes with white or color, sometimes things disappear. Don't ever think they're gone. They're actually just hiding. Sometimes you have to move things away to find them. They're underneath. So this is our half of a collar shape. If I wanted to add stitching, I would add stitching. You know, you have the option to do that with window stroke box. You do your dash line for stitching. We're usually doing about a 2-point dash with a 1-point gap for top stitching. Weighted stroke line is usually 0.5. So if I wanted to draw stitching, again, make sure your stitching no top stitching should ever have a fill color. It should only have a stroke color. So check that before you start drawing, and then you're just going to start drawing some stitching. And watch where I'm putting the stitching, you guys. So you can even look at the collar on the right-hand side that's finished to show you. So that last line is a curved line, so when I draw my stitching inside, I need to also make sure it's a curved line. So that's my stitching on the collar. It does not go here. It goes just along the edges here. It doesn't go up here, just along these edges as you see here. So please make sure if you're going to add stitching to your collar, and you don't need to unless you're doing something a little bit more casual, you can add it just in these places you see it here. All right. So one thing I forgot, and it's easy, but before we took off the croquis figure, maybe we should have added armhole seams. Basically, armhole seam would have just followed this green dotted line on both sides, but I actually don't need that because I know where the armhole seam would be, so even if you forgot to do it, it's fine. Armhole seams are loose pieces, so we're going to take the pen tool, and I might eyedrop on my red body shape color just because that armhole seam is part of the body, and I'm going to just draw a loose piece. Basically, the armhole seam always starts at the top of the shoulder and goes down to the armpit. So even if you don't have the croquis figure to reference, it's fine. Those are always the location where your armhole seams would be if it's a set-in armhole seam. Take the pen tool, click on one point at the shoulder, and then just hold shift. Click on one point and then click down on the second point. It's a curved line, so you're going to click and hold is what I meant. And that's your armhole seam, and it's a very subtle curved line. It's a loose piece, so I can pull it off. Once you do one, copy and paste, object transform, reflect, so you get the other, reflect vertical, and put it on the other side. Once you have sets of things like armhole seams, where there's there's a set of 2, you can always get in the habit of clicking on them, holding shift to select both of them, and you can object group them. So I like to group things that are usually sets of 2. Or when I draw pocket shapes, I like to group them. Like, for instance, this collar shape is done, so I'm going to do an object group on that. And, If by chance when you drew this collar shape and you felt like the collar was a little 70s kind of wide, you can always take the white arrow and reduce it. You would have to do the same thing with the stitching if you did any changing of the collar shape, but you know, object group it once you're done so that when you use the black arrow, if it's object group, you can just copy and paste it. So again, we're doing a half a collar shape and we're going to object transform reflect it like we do on every half of a drawing. And we're going to bring it over to the other shoulder to meet. Now this is the part that's a little bit tricky to understand, but what I want you to understand about these types of jackets where they have a collar and lapel, remember that they are buttoned. So usually these blazer jackets have a button through. So what happens is that the collar that I just drew is over here on the left side. The one on the right is the copy and pasted collar. What I need to do now is do a subtle operation where I take the white arrow and I look and I maneuver this collar right here to hide underneath this collar right here. So you can see that there's a little overlap. And the overlap happens because this button placket right here gets buttoned through, so there's only part of that tip of this collar shape that's underneath that shows. So only the front like pointed part of the collar right here where I'm accenting my cursor is the part that shows. That this other collar has that same pointed tip except it's hiding behind the other collar. So you need to make sure that you show that button overlap. So don't just copy and paste the collar without doing that manipulation. So you can see what happens is that I have now copied and pasted it, and those two pointed bottoms here of the bottom of the lapel, you can see the other one sticking out. So I need to hide this part right here underneath here to make it look like it's overlapped. It's a little bit trickier, but it's not. I'll walk you through it. So first, before I do that, is I'm going to take the pen tool, and what I'm going to draw is a seam line. I'm going to draw this right here. A center front seam. So you can see I have the collar tucked in, this part's overlapping, and I draw a center front seam all the way down my jacket, and that's what how the jacket opens. You unbutton these buttons and the whole jacket opens right here. So I'm going to draw that first, and then I'm going to tuck one collar underneath the other. So I'm going to take the pen tool, and you know, I can choose to use blue or white and blue or red. It doesn't matter. Everything's going to turn into black stroke outlines at the end of the day. But again, work with a no fill color, only a stroke color. Take the pen tool, and then this is the really important part. Is depending if you're doing women's wear, men's wear jackets, there's a different overlap. So this one, I'm going to have the center front seam where this collar is on top of this collar. So I'm going to do my center front seam from here all the way down. So I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm going to click on that top tip, that bottom tip of that collar, and then I'm going to hold shift all the way down. Oh, actually I realize I'm still in my top stitching mode, so I need to click off of dash line, take my point back to a 1 point stroke weight, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to, I might need to manipulate it a little bit, take the white arrow. Basically what I want to do is just have the tip of this center front line meet the tip, the bottom tip of that top collar. So this is my top collar. This is one that's going to overlap. So that's going to be my center front line. We'll come back to that. But now that I have that indicated on where the jacket actually opens, which it's going to open right here at my center front line once I add buttons, now this is the collar tip that I need to hide. I need to hide it underneath this collar. So I'm going to take the white arrow, and what I'm going to do, oh, before I do that, I'm going to add a point. This is a new function that we have not talked about yet. So we're going to take the pen tool and we're going to add an additional point onto, let me zoom out for a second before we do that so you can see. I'm going to add an extra point to this line segment right here. I need an extra point so that I can tuck this point that's at the tip, and one more point I could tuck it underneath the collar. So let me just show you. But I'm going to add another vector point because right now if I click on this line segment, which is a curve line, there's only 1 point right here and 1 point here at the tip. I need one additional one, and it's going to be right about here where the tip of my cursor is now. So you can add in a point or you can delete a point onto an existing line segment using the tools that are found underneath the pen tool. So if I hold down any tool that has this little diagonal triangle at the bottom right hand corner, that means there's tools hiding underneath other tools. So if I hold it down, then I get to see the other tools underneath. I want to use the add anchor point tool. And basically it looks like the pen tool just with a little plus sign, basically indicating that you can add a point. So now you can see my little anchor tool, no matter where I hover over it has the little plus sign. So I'm going to click on this line segment right here, the tip of my cursor. And what I did is I just added a point onto an existing line. And let me highlight it with the white arrow so you can see. There's an additional point right there that I just added that wasn't there a second ago. I used the Add Anchor Point tool to do that. And if I ever wanted to delete that point, I can go underneath the pen tool again and go to the Delete Anchor Point tool, and all I would have to do is hover the cursor over that point and it would delete it for me. So if anytime you added too many points and you want to delete something, you can always delete it, but you have to hover over the point that you want to delete. Okay, so now what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try and tuck this little pointed bit right here underneath this other top collar. So I'm going to take this white arrow and I'm going to take that one point and I'm going to move it and kind of hide it underneath. And you can see automatically that you can't see that tip anymore. And this is the crossover detail that I'm looking for. So this is where the front collar here, the front lapel overlaps, and the back of the they're both front collars, but front collars and front lapels. The lapels are the bottom parts. But I want to just make sure the left one is hiding underneath the right one. So that's all the intention of what we're trying to do here. And that's just because we have a buttoned overlap jacket. So then once you do that, you're going to also need to move your stitching. So take the white arrow, move your stitching up, and make sure it's flush against your collar. So that's all I'm trying to do, guys, is just make sure that I have that overlap. This overlap is really important if you're going to do a button-through jacket. If you're going to do a zip jacket, you don't need it because the zipper teeth meet each other right at the center front. But if you're going to have a button-over jacket where it has this lapel function, you're going to need that little overlap detail. Okay, so I got my center front line, I got my two collar and lapel shapes. Now what I want to do is draw a back of the collar through the front. My collar shape is going to look something like that. Basically, it's made up of 4 points. Click on them with the white arrow. You can see my 4 points. It's a straight vector point, straight line segment at the top, straight on the sides, and only one curved line at the bottom. So that's what you're going to draw, and you're going to draw that right here nestled in between the shoulders, and it's going to fit somewhere in that. So I actually drew this separately, so let me do a new one because that was on a different jacket. So what I'm going to do if I'm going to draw it is maybe I'll lock the collars for a second. So I'll click on both of them and do an object lock selection just for the moment because I don't want to mess anything up. I'm going to make sure again that I have fill. Actually, you know what? Let's put a white fill into this. Let's do a white fill color here. So add a white fill box and then have a stroke color because we will want our back collar to be filled. So we're going to take the white arrow. Take the pen tool. And you're going to draw your back collar. Basically, it's going to hide behind the front collar. So these pieces right here are going to cover over top. So the shape that I'm going to draw is probably going to look really weird at first, but it's going to make sense once we hide it. So we're going to take the pen tool, we're going to draw a shape that's kind of straight at the sides. It's going to connect kind of across there and then across there. It could be a curved line actually at the top, a subtle curved line or a straight line depending. Then we're going to take the white arrow just to reveal our points so that when I hover over that last point, I wait till the minus sign appears. I'm drawing a brand new shape, you guys. So this is the collar shape. Kind of rests on the shoulders and then it goes around and connects back. Wait till the circle appears next to the pen tool because you want to make sure the shape is joined, and we're going to do a curved line at the bottom. So this looks really weird and bizarre at first, but this is basically what your back collar shape is going to be. It's meant to be fitted across from shoulder to shoulder. So that's where you can see from shoulder to shoulder is how wide I made it. And the top part should fit on the interior part of your front collars. And then you can always scale it if you need to meet it a little bit better at the top. So this is the back collar shape that we're trying to achieve. And it's a loose piece. It's filled with white. Join shape again. Now I'm going to do an object unlock all because I want to unlock that front collar the front collar and lapel that I have grouped. I want to unlock it. And what I want to do and hopefully your collar shape and your top stitching are all grouped. because if they are, you can hold shift and you can select both of them at the same time, and you can bring your collar and your lapel shapes to the front, and that will hide this little bit of the back collar behind it. Object, object transform, sorry, object arrange, bring to front. And you can see by me doing object arrange, bring to front, now my back collar is hiding underneath my front collar. And just make sure that it's lined up, you guys. So make sure that this part right here is lined up from the top part of the collar. You might have to make subtle manipulations with the white arrow because I don't like that little piece sticking out. But basically the goal is to have the top parts of your front collar meeting the top part of your back collar. And you don't want anything sticking out of the body shape, so I had a little loose seam sticking out of the collar shape. You want to make sure everything's confined. So that's how you draw a collar shape, and then all you're going to do is finish up your details by adding buttons. You know, you can add, this is a detail I added with the rectangle tool. If you choose to have that detail on your jacket, you can take the rectangle tool and just draw a little hand pocket at the top. Usually this is where people that wear these types of jackets would put a handkerchief. You're going to draw some solid seam lines here that you can group. So 2 loose pieces right there. There's your forward shoulder seam, so that's just a seam detail right there. You're going to add buttons. You have the option of drawing different pocket details. If you're going to draw the single welt or double welt pocket, please use the rectangle to do both. You just click and hold them and draw them into your body shape. And usually the point I would use there would probably be a 0.75 stroke weight. If you're going to draw a double welt pocket like you see here, what I want you to do for that, this is a single welt pocket in red, what I just did. If you're going to draw a double welt pocket, all you have to do is draw a loose piece directly in the center. Click one point, hold shift, click the other, and all it is a loose piece right in the center of what a single welt pocket looks like. Now you have a double welt pocket by just adding that seam detail. You're going to draw a patch pocket. You know, you're just going to try and draw half of a patch pocket. So if I click on this patch pocket, you can see my vector points here. So what I did is I drew a half of a shape from here, go straight. So I'll just do that real quick right now. So you're going to draw a half of a pocket shape, and you can always scale it later, you guys, so don't worry about how big it is right now. You can always put it on the body and you can scale it at a later time. Start at the top of I'm drawing a half, so I'm going to draw right through the center, one point, connect to the top, the next point using the pen tool, and then I'm going to go straight down. There's lots of different patch pocket details. I did one with rounded corner edges here. There's ones that are more angled like we did on the 5 pocket pant. This would be that one. There's ones that just go straight like a square. If you want to make that angled look that I have here, then you just take your next point and it's a curve line, and you click and bend until it looks like a very subtle curve line. Actually, it's more rounded, not subtle at all, actually. Take the pen tool, hover over that last point again, and then you're just going to go pretty straight at the bottom. But the goal is to have a half of a shape. So I have a half of a shape right here, and I'm going to copy and paste it. Object transform, reflect it, hit OK, and this is for anytime you're doing any kind of patch pocket design or even this flat pocket design. I did it with a half a shape. And again, don't worry about how wide this is because it's obviously clearly a lot wider than what I have over here. I can always join the body shape, which in this case is a pocket shape, and I can scale it smaller or less wide later. So I'm just going to line the two things up. You know, you can also use the window align tool if you want to align top edges to each other to make sure before you join your points that the top edges are always aligned. You can use the window align tool right here to help you with that as well. So we're going to join our points. Again, 2 ways to join your points. You can do right click join, and there's 2 points at the top that needs to be joined and 2 points at the bottom. So you have to do right click join twice. Or you can do the Command J function that I showed earlier, which would be Control J for anybody that's working on a PC. That's just a manual way to show how to do right-click join. So either way works. Now, depending if I brought this pocket shape onto my body, so let's zoom it back up here, and and I just drew it freehand right there, but then I look at it and I put it on my body shape and I'm like, whoa, that's really wide, which I think this would be very wide. I can always take the black arrow and scale it widthwise. I don't have to hold shift unless I'm holding shift only if I like the proportion of my pocket, which means I like the height and I like the width, and all I want to do is scale it smaller or bigger. But if you don't like if you think it's a little too wide but you like the height of it, then you can just take the black arrow and use the little scaling boxes in the middle to move the proportion of either the width or the height to what you think might look good. So that would be a patch pocket detail, and then all you would have to do is add stitching to that patch pocket detail, which is what I did here. So you can see if you're going to do a patch pocket detail, you don't have stitching at the top because that's where your hand goes. And I actually just realized I need to make that touch. And then the other thing is, so you'll add buttons. That is going to be found in your clip files for CADing. Let me just ungroup one of these buttons so we can see. You'll grab that from your clip files from CADing lesson. And once you grab that and you copy and paste the button that we used from the clip files for CADing.ai file, it will show up in what's called Windows symbols. Windows symbols. Once you copy and paste it in there, it will show up in there. It may show up as a separate button in separate buttonhole. If it does, that's fine. All you have to do is click and drag it out, and you can pull it out separately. If you copied and pasted it directly into your file, you won't have to pull it out of Windows symbols. I didn't copy and paste it into this file. It was already, I did it earlier, so I have to pull it out of Windows symbols to get it again. But if you copy and pasted it into the file directly, you don't have to do what I'm doing. But if you have pulled it out of Windows symbols, you just have to, in the buttonhole are separate, you just have to bring the button to the front. Then you always want to make sure you object group the button and the buttonhole. Super important. So then you can take it with the black arrow and bring it around the page. So you always want to make sure the button and the buttonholes are grouped. Okay, so then you pull that and you put it in its place, and say you want a 3-button, oh sorry, don't stretch it. Say you want to do a 1-button or a 3-button placket. So if I'm going to do a 3-button placket, if I'm going to do a 2-button placket, don't worry about it. But if you're going to do 2 or more, your first button's always going to start here where the little overlap begins. That's always going to be where your first button starts. Your third button will probably be a little bit higher than the bottom hem for sure. And then just look at examples of jackets, blazer jackets online, and you can see where the button placement is. But if you're going to do 3 buttons like I have here, what you're going to have to do, make sure the 3 buttons are aligned perfectly along the center front line. So you're going to take the black arrow, select your button and buttonhole that are now grouped, and you're going to hold shift to select the other one. You're going to go to window align. Window align, I already have the box open, so let me just close this. Window align tool, and you're going to make sure that those buttons and those buttonholes are actually aligned objects horizontal line left, which just means the edges of both the button are aligned perfectly along the center front line. Now if you want to add a 3rd button that's equally spaced and also aligns between these 2 buttons, you're going to use something called object blend, and the first thing you're going to do is go to blend options. So make sure both your buttons are selected first before you go object blend options. Blend option box is going to pop up. You're going to go to specified steps. You're going to type in the number of specified steps, is how many buttons do you want to show up between the first and the 3rd button. I only need 1 more button to make a total of 3, so I'm just going to click on number 1, hit OK. I wish so bad that this automatically would give me my 3rd button, but it doesn't. But you have to do 1 more step. You got to go to object blend, and then you have to hit the word make. So blend options first, type in your specified steps, then you got to go back, object blend make. Object blend make will give you your 3rd button, and it will give you perfectly flush alignment along that center front line. So there's my 3 buttons. I start my patch pocket. I'm not going to finish this so you guys can see what the design looks like below. But basically, to get your back view is really important. So also want to stress to you that if you're going to add any kind of details, you need to add some kind of fit details. Something's pretty common on these types of jackets are what is called darts. So you can see them here coming up from the pocket, here and here. That's a fitted detail that's really necessary on some of these jackets. You can also do something that's called a princess seam, which I'll show you right here. So this is also very common in women's wear and men's, but more so in women's wear. It is where the seam, and again, these are loose pieces when you CAD it. It starts from the armhole seam and it goes all the way down to the hem. So that's what's called a princess seam. Darts are just something that shoots up from the pocket about halfway up from the into the chest area, and that would be called a dart. This jacket right here is a combination of a princess seam that starts at the armhole and goes down to the hem, and it also has a dart that just shoots straight up from the pocket. So you guys can decide how fitted you want it. If you want a really fitted look, I would suggest princess seams. If you want something that's a little bit more boxier, you can just do a dart like you see here, and maybe just princess seams in the back only. What I will tell you is that the back view of your jacket is going to have what's called a two-piece sleeve. So there's a seam here at the back of the sleeve that will show in my back view design. All right, so I'm not going to finish this front view. I'll take an up-close view at the end of what the front view looks like so you guys can just take a picture and reference it for your assignment. But this is going to be your jacket design, so I'm not going to finish it because you're going to finish your own particular design. I'm just talking about the main mechanics of how to especially make this collar detail and how to do buttons and such. But as your design, you design it. So copy and paste it. Now I'm just going to quickly show you how to do a back view. There's certain components on the back view that are super important to a jacket like this. So say my front view is all done, right? Pretend this all done. All I need to do, I'm going to copy and paste the whole thing, and I'm going to start deleting off parts of it that I don't need. So for the back view, because I'm ready to use the front view. Always use your front view to start your back view. Don't ever start your back view from scratch. That way we can keep the proportions the same, symmetry the same. Always use your front view to make your back view, and then all you have to do is delete off a few things, add a couple things, and then you're usually done your back view in a few seconds or a couple minutes. So I'm going to delete off all these details that only show up on the front view, and then you can see that I already have my collar shape back there because I drew it in the front view sketch, but now all I have to do is just maybe stretch it out a little bit because it's supposed to touch from shoulder to shoulder, and just make sure that it is. It didn't matter so much when I had a front view collar covering it up, but it matters right now, now that I can see the edges of my back view collar. I want to make sure it's touching shoulder to shoulder. So certain things that are very particular to a back view of a jacket like this. And these are all loose pieces. Depending on if you want stitching or not, if you don't want stitching, you don't have to have it. If you will have stitching, because all throughout your whole jacket has stitching, you will only have your single needle stitching showing up right here as you see on my back collar. So that's the only place you're going to see that. Another thing that's particular about the back view of this type of jacket is you're going to have a center back seam. So we had a center front seam right here that only went from the bottom of the lapel all the way down. That opened up the jacket. Now the back view center back seam goes from the bottom of the back collar all the way down to the bottom hem. That's a loose piece. I can pull it off. It's hold, shift, draw 2 points, perfectly straight line. That's a detail there. That's very specific to the back view. There's also a detail on the back view that this is called what's called a single bottom hem vent. So basically, if you've ever seen a blazer jacket where if you ever worn one, it would open up right here in between what this is just a little detail right there that holds the, it's a little stitch detail. We can even change it to stitching. Most of the time we indicate it as just a little straight line, but there's usually a stitch detail right there that opens up the vent. So it would the jacket would open right here at the butt area. It would open up from here to here, and it gives you a little bit more extra movement in the back of the jacket. So that's all you have to do to indicate that is just draw a loose piece like that, slightly angled, point to point, just right there, right, touching the center back seam and going a little bit further down. The next detail that's very specific to the back view, let me just ungroup so I can pull this off so you can see it, is I drew something called a princess seam shape. So I'll just quickly draw that again. I'm going to take the pen tool and I'm actually going to go pretty close. I'm going to touch the bottom sleeve hem right here with my first point, but I'm not going to start over here. I'm going to start pretty close to the undersleeve. So this is called the undersleeve right here, the under part of your arm. So I'm going to draw my first point down at the bottom sleeve hem, but closer to the undersleeve. I'm going to click one point, and I'm pretty much going to hover the next point over to my armhole seam. and it's a straight line, no stroke, no fill color, and I'm trying to make the equal width in between where the underseam of the sleeve is right here to where this two-piece seam is. So this is a seam line that divides the sleeve into two pieces. So I want to make sure the width here, right here and here, and the width down here is the same. So you want to make sure it's consistent width between the underseam and of the sleeve and the seam that I just drew. Next thing I'm going to do is hover over that last point, and I'm going to join back onto it, I'm going to draw a very subtle curve line right here. And that's going to be the starting of what's called my princess seam. Then I'm going to take the pen tool, hover over that last point to connect on it, and I'm going to draw a princess seam that connects all the way down to the bottom hem. So you're going to have a princess seam that's going to look something like this. And it's going to have a little subtle curve line right here, but then the other two lines are straight. So it's going to be a joined shape, not a joined shape, sorry, a joined stroke line piece. There's no shape about it. It's just a loose piece, joined shape, joined seam line. And you're going to copy and paste it and put it on the other side. Now the other option is on your designs of these types of blazer jackets is you can also put buttons on the cuff. You can put 1 button, 3 buttons, whatever you want to do. You can be inspired by a particular design. You'll just add that and put them alongside where you see here. So basically this is the finished product of 2 different styles of blazer jackets, and there's so many different variations. It's really up to your particular design. I just wanted to make sure that I covered the basics of especially how to draw that collar and lapel shape, because that's always very tricky. Probably the trickiest part to this lesson. But just know you have lots of different pocket variations you can do. You can just do research of different designs online. If you wanted to do a double-breasted look, you would have to just draw your lapel overlap a lot further over, where your center front line would be all the way over here. Probably look really strange, and your overlap would be a lot more exaggerated. So you can even, use this as a visual example, and you can see the difference between the overlap here versus the overlap there. That would be a double-breasted version, but we just drew a single-breasted lapel jacket, some that's a little bit more casual with stitching details, some that are a little bit cleaner without stitching details. Really important to have a center back seam with some kind of vent detail. You can either have a single vent, or you can add vents on your princess seam, which would just be taking that little detail and bringing it over here, and then copy and paste it reflected on the other side if you wanted what's called a double vented detail. But either way, you need some kind of vented hem detail right here where the jacket opens up at the back. Front view, back view. Just remember, if you have stitching on certain things that appear on your front view, like that you have stitching at your sleeve hem, stitching at your bottom hem, remember that those things wrap around the body, you guys, and they're going to show up on the back view as well. So always make sure you're comparing your front and your back view and see what's the common theme. Are the sleeves and the body shape the same? Yes, because the front view gives you your back view shape. So if they are, look at what your stitching placement is on the front and make sure that you copy and paste that same stitching detail onto the back. Some things obviously don't apply. You have details unique to the front view that don't show up on the back view, but the details that do share between front and back, you always need to make sure your stitching is in the same place. So hopefully this lesson has helped you to design your own first jacket, hopefully, for a project in the future or your final project as we come along.